Now, a few moments ago, I made mention of a term called Ethernet, right? When we're talking about going and get patch cables or Ethernet cables. Well, Ethernet is the most common form of network communication used in today's local networks. Okay, so that's what Ethernet is. It's a type of network, and you'll notice it says LAN technology type, so local area network technology type. So within our local area network, we typically set up what's called Ethernet networks. Ethernet is what's known as the 802.3 standard, as specified by the IEEE. Again, another acronym, another group of people out there that sets standards. Don't worry about that. What 802.3 actually establishes is what's called the CSMA CD access method. CSMA CD stands for Carrier Sense Multiple Access with Collision Detection. And we're going to talk about these access methods in more detail in a later lesson, but I will tell you that the idea here is that carrier sense means that each machine has the ability to sense whether there is data out on the cable. Multiple access means everybody has access to the cable at the same time. Okay, and so basically, if you think about it, everybody has access to communicate out on the same cable at the same time. And the way that they do so effectively is by sensing whether anybody else is currently communicating on the cable, waiting their turn. When the cable's quiet, they go ahead and transmit. But sometimes accidents happen, and we have what's called a collision, meaning two computers try to communicate at the same time. They both send data out on the cable. That data collides with one another. Well, we have what's called collision detection, so we can recognize that that collision has happened, and we can address it and figure out a method of retransmission. So that's how Ethernet works. Now, why did I mention this? Well, I mentioned it because when you're looking at the different types of cable, you will see certain technology ratings or listings, and very often they have to do with Ethernet networks. So the first one I have listed here is something called 10 base T, and you'll notice in the second bullet point I have it divided into the number 10, separated from the word base, separated from the letter T. And the reason why is because that's how you distinguish what these cable types actually represent. The 10 represents how fast the data can travel, so that's the 10 megabits per second. Base represents whether we're talking baseband or broadband, so it means baseband or digital communications. And then the T represents the type of cable, telling you that it's twisted pair cable. Or again, some people will say the T stands for telephone cable. Now that was standard Ethernet. We then had something called fast Ethernet, right? We were talking about the twisted pair cable. I talked about how, in the old days we had 10 megabit networks. Then we moved up to 100 megabit, and this was what was known as fast Ethernet, where we had 100 base TX and FX, which you'll notice they're both 100 megabits. They're both baseband. The only difference was the TX and the FX, where we had either twisted pair cable or fiber optic cable. Then we moved up to Gigabit Ethernet, where we have 1,000 base T or 1,000 base X. Again, both representing 1,000 megabits per second or a gigabit per second. They're both baseband. And again, the T is twisted pair versus the X being fiber optic. Now, I will tell you, there are more technology types, and I mean considerably more technology types than just what I listed here. But these are some of the more common technology types specifically related to Ethernet, which is the most commonly used network in today's local networking environments.